No one becomes illuminated by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Carl Jung. Have you ever felt adrift, even when surrounded by people, as if there were a silent emptiness inside you, an absence of direction, a weariness that even rest cannot cure? Many spend their entire lives searching for meaning, in work, in love, in faith, yet seem to drift further away from themselves. Carl Jung believed that the answer to this unease does not lie outside in the world, but in the forgotten regions of the soul. He said that the modern man lives imprisoned by his own light, trying to appear balanced while running from what could truly set him free, contact with his own shadow. Freedom, according to Jung, is not achieved by escaping darkness, but by facing it head-on. The suffering, doubts, and contradictions we try so hard to avoid are, in truth, the map that leads to self-knowledge. Perhaps the truth that keeps you from being free does not lie in external chains, but in the fear of looking within. And it is precisely there, in the depths of the unconscious, that the journey begins. But before understanding the shadow, one must grasp what drives us to seek it, the emptiness born from a lack of meaning. The search for meaning. We live in an age where everything seems just a click away, yet what truly matters, meaning, remains distant. People chase happiness through external goals, attempting to fill an inner void that cannot be satisfied by achievements, praise, or success. The modern man, said Carl Jung, suffers not from a lack of comfort, but from a lack of meaning. Since the dawn of humanity, we have sought a purpose to justify our existence. However, the more we try to find it in things, the further we drift from ourselves. Jung believed that this feeling of emptiness is, in fact, a call from the soul, a silent invitation to look inward and confront what has been forgotten. To him, life was not a random sequence of events, but a symbolic journey. Every challenge, every loss, and every conflict are opportunities for transformation. It is in facing what is uncomfortable that the questions that truly matter are born. Who am I? Why am I here? What drives me? Jung said, "A life not lived is a disease from which one can die." Carl Jung. He reminded us that ignoring the inner calling gives rise to symptoms, anxiety, apathy, dissatisfaction. When we stop living in alignment with who we truly are, the unconscious tries to awaken us through pain. But who was the man who dared to chart the depths of the mind and reveal the hidden paths of the unconscious? The answer lies in his own story, the explorer of the soul. Carl Gustav Jung was born in 1875 in Switzerland in a small village surrounded by mountains and silence. The son of a Protestant pastor, he grew up torn between two worlds, faith and doubt. From childhood, he sensed that there was something beyond what the eyes could see. He watched his father's prayers, but noticed in them a spiritual emptiness that deeply disturbed him. This tension between religion and questioning would become the starting point of his entire inner quest. During his studies in medicine, Jung became fascinated by mental illnesses and discovered that behind every delusion, there was an attempt by the mind to heal itself. In 1900, he began working at a psychiatric hospital where he observed patients who heard voices, saw symbols, and described invisible worlds. To him, these manifestations were not merely signs of madness, but messages from the depths of the soul. It was during this period that he met Sigmund Freud, with whom he formed an intense intellectual partnership. Freud viewed the unconscious as a repository of repressed impulses. Jung saw it as sacred territory to be explored. Knowing all the theories in the world is useless if you do not know yourself. Carl Jung. And it was precisely this desire for self-knowledge that led him into one of the most challenging and transformative phases of his life. The encounter with the unconscious. Around the age of 30, Jung faced a crisis that would change the course of his life. He began experiencing intense dreams and visions so vivid that he feared he was on the verge of madness. He saw rivers of blood flooding across Europe, cities engulfed in flames, and unknown faces emerging from the darkness. What he didn't know was that these images were premonitions of what would later become the First World War. But instead of rejecting these experiences, Jung chose to confront them. He referred to this period of his life as his confrontation with the unconscious. He began recording every dream, every symbol, every inner voice. What most would call delirium, Jung saw as a dialogue with his own soul. Gradually, he began to understand that the unconscious was not a destructive force, but a forgotten source of wisdom. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Carl Jung. This decision to dive into himself led him on a journey that would last the rest of his life. He realized that the unconscious tries to communicate what we need to see, but avoid acknowledging. Every image, every sensation is a symbolic message from the core of one's being. The man who once feared madness now saw it as a portal, and from that descent was born one of the most profound ideas in all of psychology, the existence of a shadow that inhabits each of us, waiting to be recognized. The shadow, the mirror we deny. Jung believed that within every human being there exists a hidden territory formed by everything we reject or repress. He called this invisible part of the psyche the shadow. It is where we store our denied emotions, anger, envy, pride, fear, but also the qualities we are afraid to acknowledge, such as courage, sensitivity, or the desire for power. Everything we refuse to accept in ourselves is pushed into the darkness of the mind. But what is repressed never disappears. The shadow finds subtle ways to manifest, projecting itself onto others. That is why so often what most irritates us in someone else is precisely the reflection of what we have not accepted in ourselves. When we point a finger and say, "I would never be like that," we may be staring at a forgotten fragment of our own being. What we deny in ourselves eventually controls our lives, and we call it fate. Carl Jung. For Jung, confronting the shadow is an indispensable step toward inner freedom. To flee from it is to remain a slave to the unconscious. To face it is to regain control over one's existence. He said that the shadow is not evil, merely unexamined. When we recognize it, we transform darkness into consciousness. Freedom is not the absence of limitations, but the courage to accept them. Carl Jung. True light is born when we stop pretending to be perfect and begin integrating what we've always tried to hide. The shadow is the mirror that reveals who we truly are, and it is within that reflection that healing begins. Understanding this, Jung took the next step in his journey, to comprehend the masks we wear to conceal our true identity. The mask and the true self. From an early age, we learn to wear masks in order to be accepted. Jung called these masks the persona, the social face we present to the world. They are useful as they help us live in society, work, and build relationships. But over time, we begin to believe that we are only what we show. We lose touch with our essence and start living a life built upon expectations. Jung observed that the greatest danger of the persona is when it becomes confused with the true self. In trying to please others, we distance ourselves from what we feel. We fake strength when we are broken. We pretend to be happy when we are empty. This disconnection traps us in roles that do not represent who we really are. As we feed the mask, the shadow grows silently behind it, demanding to be seen. And it is in this imbalance between what we display and what we hide that many internal conflicts are born. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. The path to self-knowledge, therefore, is not to reject the persona, but to recognize it as a tool, not an identity. Freedom comes when we stop performing and start existing with authenticity. This understanding led Jung to formulate one of the most profound concepts in all his work, the process of individuation, the inner journey of integration between light and shadow, where the human being ceases to live fragmented and begins to walk toward wholeness. The journey of individuation. For Jung, the true purpose of life is not to achieve perfection but wholeness. This process, which he called individuation, is the journey through which an individual becomes what they have always been, in essence, integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of the psyche. It is the path of the deepest self-knowledge, where each person must face their own contradictions, wounds, and truths. Individuation does not occur on the surface. It demands courage to dive into the darkest parts of ourselves, to listen to what the unconscious is trying to say, and to accept that within every human being exists both light and darkness. Jung believed that only by recognizing these opposites can we find balance and meaning. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Carl Jung. Spiritual growth, according to him, is neither smooth nor comfortable. It is a crossing that breaks us before it rebuilds us. Suffering, when understood, transforms into wisdom. Every conflict, every loss, every frustration is an invitation to integration, the invitation to become whole. The most difficult task is the one that someone undertakes for themselves. Carl Jung. Individuation is not a final destination, but a continuous process. It is learning to live with who we are, without denial or idealization. It is walking with humility, recognizing both our shadows and virtues. This journey requires radical honesty with oneself, for only those who descend into the depths of their own being are capable of touching the true meaning of existence. And by understanding that self-knowledge is a universal experience, Jung realized that the human unconscious goes far beyond the individual. It connects all humanity within one invisible soul. The collective unconscious and archetypes. As Jung delved deeper into his studies, he realized that the unconscious was not merely a personal space, but also a collective one, a shared field for all humanity, where memories, symbols, and universal experiences are stored. He called this dimension the collective unconscious, an invisible realm that connects all human beings, regardless of culture or time. Within this unconscious live the archetypes, symbolic forms that shape our dreams, myths, and behaviors. They are recurring figures, the hero, the mother, the sage, the child, the trickster, representing fundamental aspects of human experience. Jung believed that these images emerge in our lives to guide us through moments of transformation, revealing truths that transcend the individual. We are not of today or yesterday. We are of an immeasurable age. Carl Jung. By recognizing these archetypes, we understand that our story is only a chapter in a much greater narrative. The anger, fear, love, and desire we feel do not belong solely to us. They are part of an ancestral drama that repeats in every generation. For Jung, understanding the collective unconscious meant realizing that the human soul is one, fragmented into billions of faces, yet united by eternal symbols that echo within each of us. Dreams, the language of the unconscious. For Jung, dreams were bridges between the conscious and the unconscious, windows through which the soul attempts to communicate with us. While we sleep, the ego falls silent, and the unconscious speaks through symbolic images, metaphors, and characters that reveal our fears, desires, and conflicts. Nothing in a dream is random. Each element carries a hidden meaning, a message seeking to restore inner balance. The dream is a little hidden door to the deepest sanctuary of the soul. Carl Jung. Jung believed that by interpreting dreams, we could better understand ourselves. They show us what we try to ignore during the day. Repressed emotions, denied truths, wounds still seeking healing. The unconscious, he said, does not seek to punish us, but to teach us. Often a nightmare is not an enemy, but a calling. It reveals what must be faced, transformed, and integrated. It is as if the unconscious were saying, "Look at me, do not avoid me." By learning to listen to dreams, human beings move closer to their wholeness. They are like maps, drawn by the soul itself, guiding us on the inner journey from fragmentation to consciousness, from shadow to light. The truth that keeps you from being free. The greatest prison of the human being, Jung said, is not found in the external world, but within the mind itself. We are prisoners of the images we create of ourselves, the masks we wear, and the shadows we pretend not to see. We long for freedom, yet fear the price it demands, self-knowledge. Because to know oneself is to descend into the depths, and there are no disguises, only the naked truth of the soul. Most people run from this encounter. They try to appear good, balanced, spiritual, but behind the appearance lives a constant conflict between what they show and what they feel. Jung believed that true freedom is born when we stop denying who we are. The shadow we avoid facing is precisely the key that unlocks the chains of the soul. Freedom is not reaching the heights but accepting the depths, Carl Jung. As long as we flee from what frightens us, we remain prisoners of the unconscious, which manifests itself through repetitions, failures, and unresolved pain. The shadow loses its power only when it is illuminated by consciousness. The person who does not pass through the hell of their passions will never overcome them. Carl Jung. The truth that keeps you from being free is simple, yet difficult to accept. You will never be whole while denying what dwells within you. The light you seek is hidden precisely in the darkness you refuse to face. The path within. For Jung, life was not a riddle to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. He believed that every human being carries within themselves a divine spark, a silent voice that tries to guide them back to their true essence. The problem is that almost no one dares to listen to it. We live distracted, searching outside for what can only be found within. The most complete life is the one that embraces its own totality. Carl Jung. Freedom is not about escaping pain, but understanding it. It is about transforming suffering into consciousness and shadow into wisdom. True awakening occurs when we have the courage to look inward and recognize who we truly are. Light and darkness, strength and fragility, love and fear. This is the journey that begins when the silence of the soul becomes stronger than the noise of the world, and it is in that moment that the human being finally begins to be free. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and share this video with those who also seek to understand the meaning of life. Remember, the shadow you fear contains the light that can set you free. He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakes. Carl Jung.